Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to show you how to create a seamless texture using Photoshop projection texturing. This is the model that we've been working with, unwrapping. It's pretty complicated in shape because it has these curves. The entire thing's round, so there's nothing really to sort of planar map out. But anyway, the UVs are right here, and I've applied a texture to it just to show you the seam that I'm talking about. You could see it in the checkerboard in the previous video that I had done, but with an actual texture on it, you can see this harsh seam on it. It's a totally stretched out image. I just fit it to match the UVs here, but the point of it is just to take a look at the harsh seams on here, and we don't want it to look like that. We want it to look just sort of all the way wrapped around. Now, in order to do this, I'm going to assign one new texture to it. Assign new material, blend, and I'm going to call this seamless texturing. Alright. The reason I'm renaming the actual material is because I'm going to do edit, delete all by type history. Okay. And the reason I'm doing this is just so when I bring it into Photoshop, basically the layer is named. So the next thing you want to do is, just in case you haven't done this already, make sure that your OBJ export is loaded, auto load, and because we're going to export this out as an OBJ to Photoshop. And again, that's Windows, Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager, and make sure your OBJ is in there. OBJ export is loaded and auto load, and close. Now, OBJ is a file format that many 3D softwares are capable of reading, and Photoshop is one of them. So I'm going to make sure, as a precaution, a lot of times if you kind of highlight your object and try to export, sometimes it just errors out and says, I don't have an object to export. When that happens, when any type of error like that happens, click the arrow right here. Make sure you select your object in object mode and do File, Export Selection. And I'm going to call this railing texturing. And it's going to be OBJ, file type OBJ. And then go ahead and hit Export Selection. Now in Photoshop, bring you over here, I'm going to go to File, Open, and Railing Texturing, and I'm going to click Open. And I'm going to change my height. It should be set to a different size by default. However, I'm just going to change this to something like 900. And then everything else should be fine. Just make sure it's a fairly decent width and height, and click OK. It will say Reading Wavefront OBJ, and then it will come up, you're about to create a 3D layer. Would you like to switch to the 3D workspace? Click Yes. Now in here, I have my object, and right off the bat, just so you know, this little window here, this little pop-up window here, kind of, is our top view. So you'll see that the actual mesh is here. And it didn't save out the name. I was hoping it would, but no problem. So in here, I have my object, and it's weird at first to get used to in the 3D format in Photoshop, but it's only because every time you want to rotate your camera or anything, you have to use these tools up here. So I'll run through these really quickly. This is by default our rotate tool. You can select the object, but I don't recommend clicking on it because you'll start to rotate the object, and this could, unless you have like a tough spot that you need to get into, that might be a good idea. But for the most part, for this lab, I want to stick with just hovering outside of the object to rotate around. Now this will, I recommend staying away from this tool itself. It will rotate your camera or roll your camera, excuse me. And then I also have my pan, so I can pan around. And this is, I believe, just like a sort of zoom in, zoom out. And this is also a zoom in, zoom out. But this, the one that I went to previously, will also pan left, right, and in and out. So now I've got the tools out of the way on how to navigate through the workspace in the 3D view in Photoshop. The other thing I want to do is, I'm just going to zoom out slightly. Okay. The other thing I want to show you is this little diffuse. That's our diffuse texture. If I double click on Blend 5.5G, yours might be Blend 1 or something. Go ahead and just double click here, and you'll see that you have your UVs all laid out here for you. If you zoom in, you'll notice that it triangulates everything, and a lot of softwares like game engines and so forth prefer to have triangulated meshes because, as I've mentioned previously, probably numerous times in my videos, that Maya and all 3D software, even though it's in a quad poly format, it still actually reads the object or the polygons in triangles, and it just displays it in the quad format. Anyway, so that's what it's doing. You can leave this open. If you click over here, it should have a little turntable thing that circles around, and that means that the object is still linked to this UV set. It can break, and typically I've learned over time that when it breaks the connection from one to the other, and we'll get to that more detail in a moment, it's typically done using the undo Control-Z tool. So just an FYI. Now, with that being said, let's get to texturing. The first thing we want to do is make sure we have our texture. So I've provided a texture in the canvas shell, and the first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and grab that. So I'm going to go File, Open, and I have two here. And this is the default railing texture that I had. I'll just go ahead and load that real quick. So these are my default sort of textures that I'm going to be working with. I'm going to stick with this one, I think, primarily. I think this is kind of a cool little scratchy sort of metal surface that would be great for somewhat of like an old railing or something. Plus, it has a lot of room where we can sort of differentiate, excuse me, the texture itself, so it's not sort of this repeating pattern. Anyway, the first thing I want to do is, in order to get that sort of seam going, I'm going to highlight over this large section, and, well, actually, I'll start here. And I'm going to hit Control-C, and then I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to be grabbing multiple sections of this. So I've already showed you how to projection texture, but I'm going to go ahead and cover it again. I'm going to press Control-V. When you do that, when you add a new layer that's not a 3D layer, right, it goes back to sort of default Photoshop 2D properties. So I can just kind of roll this around. For this one, I'm just going to go ahead and hover right over it, right click, and I'm going to do a merge down. Alright. Now, for my first start, and I'm actually going to, if I click on this little light up here, it allows me to sort of move the lighting around. I'm going to just move it over there for now. And then I click off, double click off. And I was trying to get sort of this, I can press Control plus to zoom in also, and Control minus to zoom out, but that does not keep the, that's not technically the way you should be zooming in and out. You should be using these tools. So what I want to do is I'm going to click on my blend here and see if that started to texture down. And it has. I'm going to add an extra layer here, and I'm going to drag it underneath, and I'm going to use black. And the reason I'm doing that, actually I should use a dark gray. So I can still see my UV seams here, and if I click back here, I want to be able to easily see where I haven't textured yet. And you can see here that this has that dark gray where this does not. Now, here, I'm going to slightly zoom in, because this is where that seaming issue happens. I don't expect everyone to get this absolutely perfect, but I really want you to try to give it a shot. And I'm going to go ahead and paste that in here. I'm just going to use the same piece, and then right here I'm going to hover it over, and I'm going to right click and do merge down. Now that's where the seam is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my, not my scratch metal, my mesh here, and it looks like I still have one more region to get before I sort of have this entirely done properly. And I've got a good feeling it's actually going to be on this side, and you can see, because I added that dark color, that's exactly where it is. And then I'm going to go ahead and, oh, wrong one, I wanted to use this one. And then I'm going to rotate, and I'm going to press Control V again, and I'm going to right click and merge down. Okay. Now going back in here, I'm going to look at it. It should be pretty good, at least in some portions over here in the seam. You can tell that this is where it starts to bend in the mesh itself. And at this point, I'm going to run a quick test and see what it looks like on the mesh in Maya, because as good and cool as Photoshop is, it never does get a as clear of an image as it does when it's in. And I'm going to change this from PSB to TGA. And I'm going to go ahead and call this test. And I'm going to hit save. Test projection. And make sure my alpha channels is off, and save. 32 bits pixel. Click OK. And I'm going to go into Maya. And I'm going to keep the same material on. I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to click my folder, and I'm going to go to Test Projection, and I'm going to press OK. And I want to go ahead and take a look at underneath it and see if there is any visible seam. There is a subtle, right here is where I would need to fix it, but right around here, I believe if I try to run one more texture underneath, what happens on the sides and the edges and stuff when it's wrapping around this object and projecting it down, it starts to stretch. So I have a pretty good feeling that's what happened. I'm going to go ahead and try this one more time. I know that it's happening right around here. So I know it's going to be on this side and this side, but I'm going to run a quick test again in Photoshop. Whoop, whoop. Here we go. And I'm going to close out of this really quickly because let me test it real quick and see if it breaks the connection. It seems like it might still be connected, which is cool. A lot of times, at least in previous versions, undoing and saving images from that will break the connection. I'm going to press Control V, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to click Merge Down. Again, I'm going to go to here, I'm going to Control Shift. Oh, that's funny. I've been on my layer 2 this whole time when I've been projecting. When I really wanted to be on this one, it's not a big deal. I'm gonna stick with it. Don't worry about it if you do this, make the same mistake. But it's always good to keep your your background color separate from your texturing, if you will. Anyway, I'm gonna save this out, and I want to take a look at and see if that fixed my seam. All right. TGA. Going to test projection, save, yes, okay. And I'm going to go back into Maya, and I'm going to click this, and I'm going to go reload. And now that seam should not be there at all, and it's not visible at all. So that is one way to do projection texturing, and you don't see the seam at all. I hope you can tell here. So there we go. So the seam typically, it runs right across this dark white line. That would be the edges of this texture, and it looks really, really clean. So that's so far so good. And we're really just focusing. I have some errors here that they're not so much errors as it is the projection. I'll go ahead and fix that last, but I want to make sure I get my seams just right. So I'm going to go back into Photoshop on my current layer. I'm going to go back here and see if it broke or not. Nope, doesn't seem like it did anyway. And I'm going to you'll probably find yourself doing the same thing where you are using Maya 3D controls when jumping back and forth if you do. And I'm going to Control V, Control T. I could use other sections of the I'll go up to here. I'm going to press Enter. I'm going to right click and click Merge Down. And I'll have some type of a seam here. I'm going to go back over here, and that's not so much a seam as I want to do the same thing here. Maybe I go this way this time, and enter, and right click and merge down, and rotate around, and it looks like I need to get just the bottom here. And I'm just constantly running this merge down. If I were doing this, I would grab separate sections of that merge down, of that mesh, and rotate over here, make sure I get that one. And then right here, maybe I didn't get it all the way. Control V, Control T, rotate around, enter, right click, merge down. Now, I can't tell if it's merging very well. And it looks like it's just missing that one spot. So I'm going to zoom in just a bit here, and you'll actually get a higher quality image if you zoom in. And I'll press enter, and I'll right click, merge down. And I'm going to try that one more time on this particular section. Right click, merge down. And maybe if I rotate around, maybe it's just a lighting, I don't know. I can't tell so much. Okay, go back over here, see what's happening. And you'll see that when I'm in here, I'm focusing on my seams, so I haven't even gone to the other side yet. So I want to make sure that I get all of my seams ready first before I start texturing in the center. Okay, it is still connected, which is good. If it's not, just close out of it and then double click again down here. I'm going to try this again. If this doesn't work this time, I'm just going to sort of manually hand do it. I'm just trying to show you a quick and easy way to sort of try to get this done right. maybe if I zoom out and try from further away, because it's a larger image covering that section. Merge down. Maybe it'll get it. So it did get better. It's probably just because it's right on that curve. And let's just try to make it a little bit larger and see if that'll help a little bit. Right click, merge down. And what I'll do next is rotate slightly around, do a Control V, Control T, rotate. And just simply repeating this process over and over. Most of the time, you don't have to do a section like this. It usually grabs it right away, right up. For whatever reason, it's probably because it's underneath and around a turn, which makes it more difficult to be able to read. Okay. Right click, merge down. And that's good enough. And I'll go ahead and go back over here. And I see it's right here. Now, in order to fix some of this, you'll see I have some weird coloration here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to simply I'm going to take both these layers and I'm going to actually press Control J, and then Control J duplicates them and Control E merges them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab what I call the spot healing brush. If you click on here, spot healing brush. If you can't find it there, just go back to Essentials and then make your way back. And I'm going to make the brush smaller. And the hardness I'm going to make 0. And it makes this sort of gray, dark gray region. And that's the regions that it's trying to fix. You'll see it's got some pixelation in some areas. The idea of it is to get it to, maybe if I turn the hardness up, it'll work better. It's usually pretty good. Content aware, so type is content aware, and what it's doing is it's sort of grabbing the pixels from around it. Maybe I'll make my brush a little bit bigger. That might be easier for it to. And it should start to sort of blend together. Another cool trick, that's one, so maybe here it'll work pretty well. There it worked just fine. I'll bring my brush smaller to sort of grab right over those dots. And you'll see it starts to sort of, you see how it brings in that region. And it's kind of pulling information it knows from around it to sort of fill in that information. Now, here I was hoping it would work a little bit better, but not a big deal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my clone stamp tool. This is a really neat tool. I'm going to press Alt, and that's grabbing a section, and then I'm going to just sort of softly brush this in and start to get rid of some of that strange coloration. Now, where those pixels are, and that's, oh, I did an undo, which I didn't mean to. Not a problem though. I'm going to grab from a different section on here, holding Alt, and click right here. And I just want it to softly sort of blend together without having those sort of pixelated edges like that kind of give away the projection texturing. Really the catch is, this is getting really kind of technical on it. It's really super awesome to know though. And I'm just running a quick cleanup. But the main thing this is the easy stuff to fix. The main thing you want to make sure you get right is the seams. Let's see. Typically the smaller the region you grab, the better the spot healing brush will work. Okay. That's good enough. And then I'm going to see if it broke the connection. I hope not. No, I don't think it did. And now I'm going to go back here. I'm going to zoom out really quickly, and I'm going to Control Shift S, and I'm going to go to test it now. TGA, test projection, save, yes, 32 bits. In Maya, I'm going to reload. And actually, before I reload, I want to take another look and see where we were before. Okay. Very subtle on that. I'm going to go here, reload, and now we should have a pretty clean texture all the way around, replicating that sort of metal, scratchy metal texture that we've been applying to it. Including textures, I mean, from far away, you never see it. You would see that harsh seam that I had earlier. If I go to, is it this one? Yeah. So on this one, I kind of just stretched texture over the entire thing. This would easily be seen from far away, especially on a larger mesh. This is a pretty thin railing, but I just wanted to make sure that I showed you how to fix seams such as this. So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to zoom back in and show you, instead of just grabbing a texture and slapping it on and having seams like this, I'm going to assign my other texture, and you'll see that that seam is not there because we've been going around and fixing the entire thing. It looks like I got some errors in here. I've been working on this side apparently, and I can go ahead and just finish this off really quickly while I'm at it. I might as well, just to show you. And go back into Photoshop, go back here. Alright, it did load. I'm going to zoom out. Oop. I'm going to rotate around, and now I'm going to zoom in on the other side. And I'll zoom out just, whoa, slightly. And Control V, Control T, rotate around. In fact, I might make it larger. Shift it into place. Right click, merge down. And that should do that seam. And zoom out again. Oop. And now I'm just going to go ahead and finish projection texturing the rest of the mesh, and then I'll go and do a quick little cleanup as I was just showing you. Okay. Here, I'll go right click, merge down. Oh, enter, right click, merge down. And now I'm going to rotate around to the other side of, whoa, that was the roll, not the rotate. I think you could get dizzy from messing around with that tool a little bit too much. Go Control V, Control T, rotate around, drag into place, press enter, right click, merge down. And now I'll go back over here, and it looks like I have one section left. I think I'll be able to fill that in with the content aware. There is, by the way, a way to get rid of the UVs. I'll have to look it up. I don't remember exactly how to do it. Oh, maybe it's under 3D. And no. There used to be a way to do it. I'll include it in the canvas shell if I find it out. But for the most part, I wouldn't worry. I think it's good to have the UVs. That's just me. And typically I'm going to just try to use the spot healing brush to sort of clean all this areas up. I love the spot healing brush when it's working right. Sometimes it doesn't. it's a fast way to clean up textures. This isn't something you'd want to use on something that's going to be seen up close, because it's going to really kind of mess up the imagery of it, unless it's a very, very tiny spot. That's good enough. And then here, there's another 2 pixels here. Now I'll zoom over here. I'm holding spacebar and clicking and dragging, and see if I can just kind of clean up some of this spot and this spot. And you'll see that harsh edge from a separate projection kind of playing its way in. And using the spot healing brush, it's content aware, so it's kind of grabbing imagery from around its, I guess you call it circumference here, and it's just kind of cleaning up all this info. Once you have the seams right, really you can start getting pretty technical with it. You can start adding more scratches and details and stuff like that, grunge, really anything you want. Touch up that little corner. And now I'm going to zoom out, and it looks like I've even projection textured directly right here. I'm actually going to just take that, because no one's going to see it anyway, but just so we have it on the texture map itself, do something like that. And I just copied, pasted, and then just dragged it over. And now I'm going to save this out one more time, because this is totally fine for what I'm using it for. TGA, desktop, unwrapping, it's projection texturing, advanced test projection, save, yes, okay. And I'm going to go into my Firefox, nope, not my Firefox, my Maya, excuse me. And now you'll see it just automatically reloaded, so that could have happened to me the last time. And you'll see that we have now a fully textured railing, which is pretty neat. At the moment, while I'm at it, I might as well pull a little refresher on you. I'm going to right click here, make sure, okay, and then I'm going to go and scrub down and turn down my reflectivity, and might turn this down every, I'm going off of this here, I'd say that's okay, something like that. Another thing I'm going to do is, while I'm at it, I'm going to copy Control J and then Control E. I like to keep my originals. On this particular one, I'm going to run a filter 3D, and I'm going to generate a normal map. I'm also going to create a specular map. I'm going to bring maybe this a little bit higher. No. 0.05. And let's see what it looks like on here. Maybe bring, nope, I want to keep detail high. Ooh, 9.8. Whoa. No. Undo that. And I'm going to do 3D, oh, filter, 3D, generate normal map again. And that's what it was. Bring this. Ooh. And oh, my blur's all the way up. That's why. I was wondering what happened. Bring this down to, I had it by default at 98, 89. Let's do this at 0.05, not 50. And it again did that, so let's try 0.5. Okay. Bring this higher. And bring this to 20. And let's see if I do invert height. I think I like that one better. Yeah, invert height. So I wanted to invert the height on that. I knew I was having some issues. And then I'm just going to go ahead and press OK. And from this point, I'm going to do a file. And here, switch to Essentials and go to Layers. And I'm going to do a file, save as. TGA, railing, and actually, if you're gonna plan on rendering this, as I've shown you in previous texturing demos, you'd want to assign AI Arnold surface shader. So Arnold railing normal, save, okay. And then over here, going to, in fact, go to bump mapping and file, and then change this to tangent space normals, and then here, should be right here. Go to railing normal, click open, and the viewport does an okay job on sort of displaying it. It does make the seam visible. I wouldn't worry about it because we've already done the texture on it. In fact, when you render it, it could be just a really terrible job of the actual what do you call it? The viewport sort of rendering. It could be giving us this really harsh seam. Another thing it probably also is just we have the dark blue here and the light color here because I inverted it. Let me go ahead and try to see what the other one looks like. Grab all these. Control J, Control E. I'm going to grab this one underneath. Filter, 3D, generate normal map. And here, I'm not going to invert. I'm going to leave it at like so and see what that does. It still has the same kind of coloration on it. I just want to see what it looks like. Control Shift S. And I'm already done with the lab, by the way. I just wanted to run a quick refresher while I'm on here. We'll do MCC and 3D modeling and projection texturing advanced and TGA and railing normal 2. Save. Okay. And go back into Maya and reload. And although this is Photoshop does a great job creating a normal map from scratch. Railing normal 2. Yeah, I had it. And see what that looks like. I mean, either or is fine. I'm not surprised that the seam does show a lot more because of the when it renders, it may not. And then also, as a quick refresher, under Photoshop, Control J, Control E, it already sort of has this. I'm going to do Image, Adjustments, black and white. I'm going to click OK. And then it obviously already was black and white. And then from this point, I'm going to do a image adjustment and brightness contrast. I'm going to bring the brightness down a little bit, a lot of it, and maybe the contrast. See if I bring contrast up. Something like that. I'm going to click OK. And now I'm going to save this out as a specular. And TGA, not that, TGA. And we'll call this railing spec. OK, and then go back into Maya. Click here under specular shading, under specular color. Going to click here on the checkerboard, go to File, and then I'm going to select my specular color. You'll notice that it goes flat in color all the way around because it doesn't have any type of specular information on there anymore. And I'm going to do railing spec. Click OK. And now it should be dull. It's supposed to be, and other spots should be a little bit more brighter. Anyway, that covers everything. The only thing I want for you to submit is a screenshot of underneath your mesh. So assign new material. It's just going to be faster if I do it this way. I'll do blend. The only thing I'm looking for you to submit is just with the diffuse on there. Just wanted to refresh your memory on how to do the other textures. Was it test projection? I believe it's test projection. And that's all I'm looking for. I would like to see this on your object. Actually, I only want to see it on your object because your UVs really won't do too much here. And just sort of, I guess, find an angle that works pretty good. And if the grid's on, display grid, just turn it off. And then just show me an image of underneath your mesh. A medium zoom will work. I don't expect this to be perfect for everyone, but I do want to see that for the most part there is no visible seams anywhere on it. There might be a very subtle one, but I don't want it to be as harsh as the previous. I don't want it looking like this. I can't. Seamless texturing, which one is it? Blend 4? I don't want to see it looking like this. I would want to see an honest effort on your texturing, your projection texturing, that we do not have this harsh seam. We have a, not that one, not that one either. Blend 6, where you can easily tell that it does not have the seam on there. I want to be able to tell that it's underneath the mesh, so give me a screenshot that looks something along the lines of from this distance underneath the entire thing, and I'm simply looking to make sure that there's no real visible. Give me 2 screenshots, one from this point, 3 screenshots. One from a perspective view like so, one from underneath, alright, and then one zoom close up on a part of your texture. Okay, so thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful, and stay tuned for the next one. Thanks for watching.